How do you practice your musical instrument effectively? Here are the four most important things you need to get right in order to improve as fast as possible. I've taught these techniques to hundreds of musicians and helped them to massively accelerate their progress. Now, it's easy to start strong with effective practice, but then find you fall back into bad habits. So make sure that you stay around to the end, because I'm going to show you how to stick with this in the long run. And while you're watching, make sure to like, share and subscribe if you're enjoying the video. So the first thing that you need to do in order to have your practice be really effective is to make sure you play things right when you play them. Now this sounds really obvious, that's what we're looking to do with practice after all, but there's an important distinction. This is not about playing through something a number of times, messing it up a bit, and then you get it right once and that's good enough. Because what happens every time you play something is you are strengthening a pathway in your brain. And if you play it correctly, you are strengthening the pathway that shows you how to play it correctly. If you play it incorrectly, you're strengthening a different pathway, which is something that you don't want. And your brain will look at the strength of the different pathways and it will use that to decide, well, what's actually going to come out when you play. So if your playing it correctly pathway is hugely strong and you've barely played it incorrectly at all, then pretty much every time, pretty much guaranteed, you know it's going to come out right. Whereas if it's 50-50, half the time you've messed it up, half the time you've played it right, then you've got two equal strength pathways in there and your brain is going to pretty much toss a coin to decide which one comes out. So you're never going to play something consistently correctly because your brain is equally likely to pick the incorrect way. So as I said, the way to get around this is to make sure that you are getting it right. What does this mean? Lots of ways that you can do it. Make sure that you're focused rather than mind is wandering. Break things down into smaller chunks so that there's a greater chance you'll get all of it right. Play things more slowly than you think you need to. Slowly enough so that you can be sure you'll get it right in practice. And this can sound like, some stuff that's just for beginners, but actually it's really important for people at every level. There's a great story from a pianist who went and had a lesson with the famous composer and pianist Sergei Rachmaninoff, and he was waiting outside for the lesson to start, listening to Rachmaninoff practicing something, and it was so slow that he couldn't work out what it was for a long time, until he realized it was actually a Chopin etude that he knew well and that normally went incredibly fast. So here is this world-class pianist practicing really slowly, so it applies at all levels. Now, the next thing to do to make your practice really effective is to focus on the things that actually need work. So don't just mindlessly play through everything if you're learning a piece. Which are the sections that are throwing you the most? It might be that there is one phrase that is particularly tricky for you, and then one tiny little section in another bar somewhere, maybe only 2 or 3 notes, that is also causing you problems. In that case, focus much more of your practice time on those specific bits than just playing through everything, because the things that need work will benefit from all that time. And the things that are already fine, well, you're not really getting a lot out of going over and over them again. And in fact, even worse, you will probably be dissipating your focus so that when you do come to the really important bits, you're not as zoomed in and with it for them as you would like. And the other thing to mention in this, which is essentially the same thing, but I see it all the time, is you'll often find people when they're learning a piece know the beginning much better than the end. Because what will tend to happen is we'll start at the beginning with this aim of just playing through everything rather than zooming in on the bits that really need work. And if you make a mistake, you might work on that a bit, or you might go back to the beginning and start again. And so what this means is people tend to play the beginning far more frequently than the end. And so the middle and particularly the end often don't get as much attention. So alongside this, just be aware, am I giving equal attention to all the bits to start with? so that I'm not just doing masses on the beginning, hardly anything on the end. And then beyond that, well, which are the bits that I'm pretty good on and I don't need to do huge amounts more practice on, and which are the bits that I'm really struggling with and they need extra special attention. And the third thing that you want to do to make your practice really effective is to really engage with the material. Don't just play through it mindlessly. Even if you're doing correct repetitions and you're sure that you're getting it correct, you could be doing that on autopilot. All you might be looking out for is, was it correct? Did I make a mistake? But really engage with it. Reflect on what happens each time. Try different things and then see, did this help? Did it cause problems? Am I noticing, this reflection, am I noticing I'm particularly tense in places? Am I noticing I'm really having to rush in some places just to make sure I get it correct, whereas others it flows really freely? What do you notice? And when you really engage with things, this helps increase your focus and your attention naturally, but you will also notice things that are going to help you. You'll notice things that might be issues. You'll notice things that you try, oh, that's particularly effective. Maybe I should do more of that. Maybe I should try it in this different place. You'll problem solve. If something is causing you problems, don't just keep bashing away at it the same way and hoping it will change. Try 3, 4, 5 different things and then engage with that. Do any of them seem to help? And it may even be helpful for you to kind of take notes as you do this, either as you go or at the end of a practice session. And the fourth thing you want to do for really effective practice is to be clear on where are you looking to get to. It is so easy to just think, oh, I've got a whole list of things that someone has told me that I ought to practice or that I've seen and look interesting, and just spend equal time on all of them. But if you're clear, what are my aims as a musician? What do I want to achieve? When you look at that, you will usually find actually some things you could practice are very, very strongly going to move you towards your goal, and others are nice, but they're not really essential or not such a big part of it. So again, you can choose what to spend your time on based on where you're going. So an example to put this into practice, for me, one of the things that I am really focused on in improvising in jazz is to be able to improvise really strong melodies. Once I put that down as this is a big goal for me, all of a sudden I look at stuff that I'm doing to acquire huge amounts of technique where I could play really fast, complicated lines, and thinking, well, yes, I would like to do that. That's lovely, but that's not really aligned with this goal of clear, strong, improvised melodies. And so that just gives me a filter to say all the things that I'm thinking I want to work on, or people are telling me that I need to work on, the ones that are around coming up with clear melodic ideas, really important for me. I want to spend a lot of time on that. And the ones that are around crazy levels of technique, yes, nice if I can have that, but frankly, I don't want to be spending as much time there because it's not there for my goals. And just to say, those are only my goals. If your goal is to have incredible technique and play really fast, complicated lines, that is a perfectly valid goal to have. And so you might choose exactly the opposite to me if your goals are different. And when I got this in mind, it really helped me make progress, because I had done this thing before of spending a lot of time on technique just without thinking about it, because that's what you do, isn't it? And it was only when I really got clear, is that what I want? And I shifted it away, that I started to see the things that really matter to me make really strong progress. Okay, let's quickly summarize all that before I get into the bonus tip on how to practice consistently over the long term. The first thing is to get things right when you practice them. And the second thing is to focus only on the things that need the most work. The third thing is to make sure you're really engaging with the material rather than just practicing mindlessly. And the fourth thing is to be really clear on where you're going so that you can choose the most effective things for you to work on. So how do you make sure you stick with this in the long run? Because a lot of musicians come into this sort of thing with great intentions and they see good progress to start with and they're all fired up, and then they drop off over time. And the key thing here is you need to stay motivated. And this is not just something that you have or you don't. You can definitely work on increasing your motivation, and you can design things into your practice to do this. Now, this is not the time for me to go over all of them, but some ideas are to make sure that you see progress. That's really motivating. How do you do that? Well, one thing is, rather than have one big goal way off in the future that nothing, and then you might hit it in a couple of years' time, that doesn't give you those constant feelings of success. If you can break things down into much smaller goals so that every day or every week or whatever, you're reaching something very small, but there's a clear measure of progress, that will help keep up your motivation. Other things you can do are not just give yourself stuff that feels like work, feels hard. You might want to choose some things to play, to practice, just because you enjoy them. That can be fine if that helps your motivation. And a particularly good way to schedule this is to try and finish each practice session with something that you enjoy, because when you end on a high, that's really going to help your motivation as well. So lots more that you can do on that, but the key takeaway is don't ignore it. Don't just assume either you'll be motivated or you won't. Think, what actions can I specifically take to make sure I stay motivated? Now, if you want to accelerate your progress even further, then I definitely recommend checking out my video on how to get into the zone when you practice. And if you'd like the special practice and performance tips that I only share with subscribers, then head on over to playinthezone.com and sign up for the emails. They're free. I've been Morley-Fletcher. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.